Hey, main gang. I'm Ramona Mainstrom. Welcome to my podcast, Whirligigs of the Mind. Today we'll be discussing my writing process. Apparently, some of you want to know how I do my writing. Bless your toes. I don't know why, but here we go. It starts with a solid story concept. I know, bear with me. I have a ton of ideas. I have a huge amount of files, which are a sentence or three of an idea, but no real actual story, no characters, no scenes to follow up on. Just, ooh, hey, this would be cool. And I have an entire folder of those. But I don't start writing unless I have something solid to run with. What that looks like depends on the story. Maybe it's a conversation between characters, or a scene, or a decent chunk of plot. And those of you who've been following this podcast know I get my stories from anywhere. But mostly, I get them from my dreams. I wake up with something vivid in my head, sights, smells, voices, and I record it ASAP. I know not everybody can do this. I have been actively working on dream recall since my teen years. I have so many dream journals, and not all of them are story-worthy. Most of them are for analysis. I learned dream interpretation to help me deal with nightmares. But wherever my story ideas come from, conversation, music, a what if from something I'm watching, doesn't matter. When I have that solid connection to a story, I act. Sometimes I send it to myself in Messenger so I don't forget before I get to my computer. Other times I'm home and I just bolt to my office, sit down and start typing everything out that I can remember. Not as a story, but just what's in my head at the moment. Now, in this part of the writing process is where a lot of writing gurus will tell you to spend time putting together a clear plot. Do character sheets with their background, motivations, goals. Spend some time world building. According to one guru that I encountered, it's recommended that you break the story down first into chapters, then into scenes, and then into beats. This can take days or even weeks, but she promises it's all worth it because once you have everything plotted out down to the small details, all you have to do is flesh out the story. I know some authors who actually do this type of extensive story prep, and I am really grateful that it works for them. I would hate for somebody to give up on their dream of writing because stuff just doesn't pop in their head like it does for me. So I absolutely support authors who do this type of analysis and detail before they write. But yeah, that's not me. This type of thing totally kills any creativity for me. I need to follow the story as it unfolds in my head. I usually know where it's going and aim for that destination. But the very technical act of breaking it down into bits before writing the actual story, nope. And it's worse if I don't already know how the story is going to end. Trying to lay down an outline before I know where the story is going leaves me with too many options. I get overwhelmed trying to figure out which one is the best choice for the story and characters, and everything else just comes crashing to a halt. The creative flow, blocked. I'm done. Toast. The story flows and the characters develop and grow as I'm writing. When a situation comes up in the story, the characters show their colors, and I write that, which sets up the next part of the story. It has to be written as it's happening. When I try to follow a strict outline or analyze everything ahead of time, the story itself just collapses. It just crumbles away from me, and I'm standing here empty-handed, empty-brained, sitting at the computer going, where did it go? So when that happens, a story gets sent to the bottom of my work list to languish in eternal torment. Or, I've forgotten the traffic jam I created in my head and go back to the last spot I've written freely and delete everything after that without looking at the horror show of options. But that doesn't mean I don't use outlines. I've actually found a way to use outlines so that I don't get lost, which is the whole point of them, right? So here's what I do. I write out what I know I want for the story, even if it's just a vague idea or a couple random scenes in point form before I started writing the actual story. Or I'd write out the clearest scenes and then put the rest of what I knew around it in point form. And that's usually how I do it. The clearest scenes get jotted down with everything else around it. And this way, I have clear milestones I can follow, and I can merrily pants my way through a story. It's flexible. It lets both the characters and the story grow and change. And if I've written something more detailed that doesn't fit the story anymore by the time I get to it, no big deal. I don't use it. Sometimes I can just move it to a better spot. Or I just put it in a deleted file that I have in case it might work for a different story. What's that, you ask? What's a deleted file? Exactly that. Any scenes or plot ideas that get cut from the manuscript go into a file of its own so that I can find it again if I need to put it back in during editing or if I want to use it for a different book. Every book I write has its own deleted file. And yes, I have taken deleted scenes and used them for a different book. For example, I removed a steamy scene from Nocturnal Lullaby because it didn't fit with the characters' personalities. However, it worked perfectly for a portal fantasy I'm working on right now called, tentatively, The Wicked Witch of the Wests. And oh yeah, it fits much better with these characters. Recently, I've started using an outline template to make sure I hit points clearly. So, turning points or climaxes. If you've read my stories, you've seen that sometimes there's several small climaxes building up to the main one of the story. Or as subplots are resolved, there's these little tiny climaxes of action. So I've started using this specific template for every book. It saves me from having to go back in my second draft to make sure I actually hit them, which is what I've been doing for years. Write what I got and then go back and make sure I did it properly and hit everything I need to make a story be a story. I'm usually pretty good at it, but having a template makes sure I hit it the first time. After I do my little outline and all the little points in it, I put it into the big story template before I start writing the story. Sometimes I have them in the right spot. Other times I get to them in the story and I'm like, nope, doesn't go here yet. That's fine. The template is just to show me the road I'm walking on, the scenery I have, and it keeps me on track. The template also shows me where I need to fill in more of the story. And this is about as structured as I can get. Checkpoints to hit. And sometimes, I'm sitting here high-fiving myself going, checkpoint, like it's a video game. Checkpoint! Yeah! And as I said, it saves me having to go through the whole story later to make sure I hit all the points I need to. I write at my desk. I type on a PC. Laptops are too small or too uncomfortable for me to type on for long. I have to tell you, I'm really envious of those people that can just curl up on the sofa with their laptop and type, and they're writing their book all cozied up on the sofa, and it's like, I wish, dude, I wish. That doesn't work for me. I tried to get a tablet and a plug-in keyboard so I could go to the park and sit at one of the tables there and just typity-type while my kids are playing at the park. That also did not work for half a dozen reasons I'm not going to discuss right now. I know there's also various mobile options out there. They have these really cool machines with a screen, and it doesn't connect to the internet, doesn't connect to the cloud. It's just what you type stays on the machine. You come home, you transfer it to your computer. It lets you write without distractions, but I don't have the budget to try any of those. So maybe sometime down the road I'll try it. Right now, I have a small office. I have my filing cabinet. I have my desk. I have my computer. And I have another desk behind me because I share the office with my kids. At the other desk, my children do their homeschooling or game schooling while I'm working. I have an insulated tumbler with water and usually a cup of tea, usually green tea. Music, yes, either on the speaker for everyone to hear, or more often, everyone got their own headphones on because the kids are listening to their thing and I'm listening to my thing, and I'm sure it's really weird if anybody from outside ever saw us, but that's how we work. There are days where I write for several hours in the afternoon before supper. Then I sit down again after the kids are in bed and I write for several more hours, stopping about 11:30ish to make a snack. When I say snack, I mean I usually warm up leftovers from supper, or I make a charcuterie board, and basically it's just what I grew up with, where you cut up the meat and the cheese and the crackers and the olives or grapes or whatever. I don't usually eat junk food, especially while I'm writing. I like to try and keep it healthy. Speaking of healthy, I really should get up and walk around more, besides the snack and pee breaks, but I get really absorbed in my story to the point where a lot of times I can't type fast enough to keep up with what's unfolding in my head. I used to do writing sprints with other authors. That's when we start at the same time, write for a set amount of time, like 20, 30 minutes, then take a break. Share word counts, talk about how we feel about what we'd written. that didn't really last long. I know it helped the other authors, mostly because writing wasn't their full-time job. So the sprints that we did were basically the only time during the day that they got to write. And it helped them build their confidence to have other authors there cheering them on. But life got in the way for most of them, and the group that I was sprinting with just kind of fell apart. Myself, I don't keep a timer. Again, I know that there are authors that work like that because it works for them. They sit down, they do an hour sprint or whatever, then they take a break. Because I have chronic migraines, I never know when I'm going to be okay to write. When I don't have migraines, I'm working. I'm writing as much as I can while the story is flowing. I also type slower than I used to, which is super frustrating. But I still manage to get anywhere from 4,000 to 7,000 words a day, somewhere in about there, depending on, how much time I had my butt in the chair, not distracted by anything. I don't write every day, again, because of the migraines, but also I need to take some days to dedicate to podcasting, researching, editing, or it's a day for formatting, whatever. There are other jobs besides just the typity type. So, research. I research as I go, saving everything in clearly marked files. It comes in handy when I need information on something I've researched for a past book, because they're all right there. I don't have to look it up again. My language lexicons and dictionaries have come in so handy. Do I draw on real life events? Yes, I do. Sometimes it's things I've personally experienced, and that's a conversation for another day. Inspiration. Yes, I have inspirational images of scenes or characters, people, situations, sometimes memes that give me a vibe that I want for the story. And I'll put them in the folder, and every now and then, if I need to be reminded of what am I going for, I'll go through the images. I also have music playlists as inspiration while I'm writing. One of my playlists is simply a generic writing playlist, but I also have some tailored to specific stories or series that have a really specific feel to them. As I'm writing, I have 2 other files open at all times: characters and timeline. I update them as I write, tracking character descriptions, habits, histories, family, and of course, I track the events in the timeline one, so I know what order the events are happening in and in which chapter. Again, for authors who can do that in advance, that is so awesome. I am not that author. So as it comes up in the story, I also copy that information into the character file. For fantasy, paranormal, or series, I also keep a story Bible to track the world building, cultures, beliefs, creatures, species. A perfect example of this is the Nocturnal Alliance series. My vampires are not like normal vampires. My werewolves have certain quirks to them. I have angels and demons. I need to keep track of the hierarchy. I need to keep track of the layout of the 9 rings of hell. I need to keep track of certain locations. It all goes into the story Bible. And that way, when I'm working on another book, I just pull up the file, look up what I need. And yes, all of it's kept in separate files inside the story folder so I can easily find them. So what's the next step? I've written the story. I have my first draft all done. That can take anywhere from a week to a few months, depending on how much time I get to write around doing homeschooling, parenting, and life itself. Once it's done, I go through the manuscript with a self-editing checklist. I use the list to make sure I've added enough character descriptions, habits, character growth. I check to make sure every character's speech patterns are different and consistent. I fix the flow and fill in anything I may have hurried through or jumped over because I didn't have a clear idea at the time. I replace passive narration, fix tense mistakes, check for pet words, the ones that your brain keeps handing to you so it shows up 3 times in one page or 3 times in one paragraph. It also has a list of weak words or overused words that I remove or replace. I check for places where I say my character is thinking, feeling, or realizing. I rewrite them to be more action-focused. I rewrite sections to be more concise. Once I've gone through my self-edit, I save the story as a separate draft. Next stage, text to speech. I use a free program and have the manuscript read back to me as I follow along on the screen. This way I can catch things that I've missed earlier. When this step is done, the story goes to the editor. Yay! Finally, the editor gets involved. While I'm waiting for the editor to do their magic, I work on a different book. I usually have 2 or 3 actively on the go. When I hit a lull or get stuck with something, I shift to another one while my brain mulls over the first one in the background. This way, I'm always writing. When I get the edits back, I go through them and either make the suggested changes, make a different change, or I keep it as is, if it's a purposeful style choice, such as a speech pattern. When I'm done, the manuscript goes back to the editor for a proof round to catch any errors that might have been missed the first time. That's usually missed commas or the occasional word change to make a sentence flow better. Once all the changes are made, the file gets marked as my final draft and it goes to get formatted. At this point, I either already have interior art and a cover, or I'm booked for them to be completed. I give the word count, the blurb, and other details to the cover designer who sends me completed cover files, and everything gets uploaded to the distributors. And that is my writing process for every book. Whew! That is my time for today. Thank you so much for joining me. If you have any other questions or topic requests, please send a message from my website, ramonamainstrom.com, or Facebook. My podcasts are also available in video form on Facebook and YouTube. Like, subscribe, and follow if you enjoy the podcast and my books, and don't be shy to drop a comment to let me know what you think. I'm Ramona Mainstrom. Have an awesome day.